The only man I know who can play Moses, John the Baptist, and three presidents. A great actor. Charlton Heston is here tonight, and I'm thrilled about that. A star for more than 40 years, 2 Academy Awards to his credit. He's walked in the shoes of Christian saints, assorted prophets, a cardinal, 3 U.S. presidents, and through it all, managed to stay married to the same woman for 50 years. It's my honor to have with us tonight Charlton Heston.
Roger,
great
lovely
to see you.
Borrow your audience.
Great to see you. I got to go with that last thing first. 50 years of marriage.
Well, I married the first girl I went out with. I met her at Northwestern in acting class, and
she was an actress at that, or she wanted to going into
we
that,
were
right?
both students. And I always say the secret to a successful marriage is you've got to have amount of tolerance, flexibility, strong basic commitment, sense of understanding. Main thing you need is a superb husband, and I happen to be a superb husband. Modesty is always useful.
Is that true?
Also,
modesty.
Modesty.
Well, Rush Limbaugh told me that you said to him once that you just have to know 3 words to stay married. Is that a true story?
Absolutely.
What are the 3 words? I was wrong.
I was wrong. That gets you out of a lot of trouble.
It does, huh? Because your wife was an acting student with you, did she critique you as an actor when you started in the business?
Oh,
or?
she acted herself. She did several movies and plays and so forth.
So you could go home and rehearse at night, and she could read and work with you.
Yes,
That's
and we've
great.
done plays together. And we now we often do love letters, which is a marvelous two-handed piece. I'm sure you're familiar with it.
Do you, when you're being a superb husband, do you forget dates like anniversaries and birthdays, or are you pretty good at that?
I forgot that one once. We were in Rome, not an anniversary. See, our anniversary is on St. Patrick's Day, so that's easy to remember.
Oh, that's good. When you see people start to put green on you,
some foresight there, right? Thinking ahead.
Very smart.
But I'm not bad.
Not bad at
those dates.
How come so many Hollywood marriages just don't make it?
I don't know. I have an idea. People maybe expect a marriage to be run one smooth, grassy pathway into the future. And of course, human relationships don't work that way. Of course you have frictions. Of course you have difficulties. I find the longer you're at it, the more you come to understand each other. And that's the true answer, I think. And of course you need a strong basic commitment.
You played Andrew Jackson as an actor more than once because you look like him on the 20, what is it, $20
You got a $20 bill?
I got a 20 somewhere. Let me take a look at this. I think I have a 20. Here, I do, yeah. Hold that up next to your face.
There you go.
Let's get a shot of this. My guy, he does.
Sure.
That looks like you.
Same nose.
Yeah,
same
that's
cheekbones,
true. Tell me about Andrew Jackson. Did you study him?
Great man.
Really?
I think he was, obviously, he's revered as one of our great presidents, or he wouldn't have been on that low a denomination of currency. But I think he's been slightly underestimated. He was our first populist president, the first Western president, the first non-elite, if you will. He was the son of backwoods farmers.
You know a lot about politics. You've been taking a lot of heat because of your NRA position, not from people who...
Not from people who know.
Who know or agree, but I mean, the media, because they say, look, there are too many kids out there killing, we got to get rid of these guns. What do you say to them?
I say that I'm a fan of the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment guarantees, indeed requires, American citizens to the right to bear arms. And indeed, the idea was that they were to present themselves for inspection at least once a year. And it still is important. Firearms are used to prevent crimes at least 2,000 times a day. Very seldom actually fired, but the mere presentation of a firearm in a little convenience store or the home makes a big difference. Besides, you can't attack the Bill of Rights. That's the unique document in government.
Right.
Somebody
adjust your mic. Pull it up here a little bit. Pull it around. It's just turned over there a little bit. This is live television, so we don't care.
There we
go. Is that better? You got it? Well, some people interpret that as at the time there was to form a militia, but today it's an unnecessary...
That wasn't what it was for.
Okay.
If you read Madison, you read Jefferson, Adams, they were most specific, particularly Jefferson. He said every man should be proficient in the use of a rifle, and every man has the right to have one. Madison said the same kind of thing.
I own weapons, so
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have a problem with it. But I do see, I saw in USA Today, somebody shot their kid who came home and set off an alarm. And that's that's a tough one.
You know, that deranged woman in South Carolina drove her kids into a pond and let them drown there.
Right, there are things happen.
Do we pass laws against automobiles who kill more people than firearms do anyway, of course?
Right.
So what do? You say people, you say irresponsible people can't drive. Irresponsible people should be denied the use of firearms. If you use a firearm in the commission of a crime, you should go to prison for life. No question of that. Trouble with
we don't enforce the laws, is that what you're saying?
There are more than 20,000 gun control laws on the books right now. We have plenty of laws to control the use and possession of firearms. But people are not punished for committing crimes. Laws don't prevent criminals from owning firearms. They don't buy firearms anyway. They steal them. That's what criminals do for a living.
Yeah. Do you see a day coming when they will take away firearms from American citizens?
It is, if we ever have a totalitarian government, that's always the first action of any totalitarian government, which the Founding Fathers understood, is to deny the private ownership of firearms so that the people are powerless.
Are you worried about that in this country? Is that why you're ever vigilant, or you're out there talking for the NRA?
I do not imagine that we will have a totalitarian government, but I didn't imagine the collapse of the Soviet Union either.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that. You've been involved in Republican politics. A lot of people wish you had run for office in California.
I've been approached to run for the Senate twice by both parties, not the same election cycle, obviously, and not when the Democrats were the way they are now. This was I was a Stevenson Democrat. I wasn't a member of the party, but I voted for him. I worked for Jack Kennedy. The party, I always say...
Jack Kennedy was a very conservative president, actually.
And actually...
people forget that. They have this fantasy that Jack Kennedy was somehow a liberal, but he was... read his inauguration speech. It's the most militaristic speech of the 20th century.
Of course, no Democrat nominated since he was nominated could possibly have given that speech. We will go anywhere, bear any burden, pay any price in the defense of liberty.
Absolutely. You know it.
They always say, what made you change, Chuck? I said, I didn't change. The Democrats changed.
Yeah, right, because Jack Kennedy was also for capital gains tax cuts.
Capital gains tax cuts of all kinds, and capital gains reduction.
Yeah, no question about it.
And line item veto.
Right.
Yeah.
Religion, has it played much of a part in your life personally, and if so, when did you get into it, or when did you believe it?
My personal beliefs are strong and private and have nothing whatever to do with this series that I did first for A&E, because I am not equipped to speak of religion as a religious. I'm not a scholar. I'm not a rabbi or priest or minister. I'm not even an historian or an archaeologist. But I'm an actor. I tell stories, and these are the best stories there are. The
Bible stories. This we have this in still story. You can see it here. Tell me about this, Chuck.
Well, what I did was take the 5 books of Moses from the Old Testament and all 4 Gospels from the New, and redact them into what I felt, because that's my only justification for doing it as a performer, as a storyteller. These stories began as oral stories told around a campfire. Long before the Phoenicians invented writing, there were guys sitting around campfires telling these same stories and passing them on. And that's essentially what I've done. We went to the Holy Land so I could do the commentaries in the places where the events are presumed to have taken place, the Red Sea, the River Jordan, and so on. And the stories themselves, I act, really, on a Roman stage recently excavated at Bet Shean near Caesarea, and on that stage I tell those stories.
Okay, we're going to see a little bit of this tape. We'll discuss it more later. Stay with us. We're here with Charlton Heston. We'll be right back.
The earth was without form and void, The darkness was over all. Then the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the deep. God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light, and it was good. So he divided the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night.
The Lord of hosts will do battle for us. Behold his mighty hands.
I was just asking if the Red Sea actually parted, and he said he has the stick and it works in his swimming pool. This is very impressive work. Let me just read a couple of reviews of this. An impressive accomplishment, a work steeped in spiritual passion, the Wall Street Journal. Powerful, impassioned, the New York Times. And
That's pretty good.
that's pretty good from the New York Times.
Well, pretty good writing. You go with good writing.
Anyway,
you're way ahead.
this is now the Bible available in video stores. Charlton Heston did this where? All over?
In the Holy Land.
In the Holy Land.
The Mount Sinai, the Jordan River. We sort of rebaptized my little grandson while we were there. Yeah, dipped his heel in it.
Did you ever think that you'd be? Everybody thinks of you and they kid you about Moses. I was Moses. You ever get tired of being able to live that down?
Well, really, I've only played 2 biblical roles. Moses for the Jews and John the Baptist for the Christians. Right. And then this last summer I did Brigham Young for in a cable thing for CNN.
Really?
And for the Mormons, and I figured it's only
for you.
fair. That's
yeah,
it.
that's right.
You know? The Mohammedans don't allow you to. The
That's
Muslims,
right.
you can't do Muhammad.
The life story of the Dalai Lama, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Let me go back to when you were a kid. You grew up in the Midwest.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about your childhood.
I was raised in a very small settlement in Michigan, northern Michigan. I went to a one-room school, 13 pupils in 8 grades, 3 of whom were my cousins, which left me while it was a great boyhood, it left me ill-equipped for life in a high-class suburban high school outside Chicago I went to by pure geographical accident. It was then considered the best public high school in the United States, and it probably was. And they had a theater program. I was not equipped to do much else there because they had no team sports up in Michigan, so I didn't know game
You
sports.
didn't play baseball or football?
There weren't enough kids. 13 kids in the school, and half of them girls, 3 of them my cousins. But so that when I went to this other high school, I qualified for the chess club and the rifle team, and that doesn't make for a great career.
Were you a decent student or not? Were you a poor student? I
was a lazy student. I was in an accelerated program, but I coasted a lot. I came out with a B average, you know, but I could have gotten the equivalent of a university education at that high school. But on the other hand, I did get a theater scholarship to Northwestern.
Every time I talk to people about education, public education in America today, they say there isn't enough money. But I saw a study that took kids from the 9th grade to the 10th grade 100 years ago, and they gave that test to high school seniors today, and the high school seniors flunked it. Now, they didn't have a lot of money 100 years ago, so how did those kids know how to...
They didn't have a lot of bureaucrats 100 years ago either.
Is that what's wrong?
I think one of the shames of this country, of which I'm very proud, is that it has, in the last 30 years, what was once the greatest system of public education in the world has collapsed. It's in ruins. What do you attribute that to? Too heavy a bureaucracy, the interference of the federal government, imposition of, we shouldn't have a Department of Education. We shouldn't have people in Washington telling us how to educate our kids. They were doing that pretty well. Inner city kids, too. Look what happened to New York University. Look what happened to City College.
I had dinner with Thomas Sowell not too long ago, and he said that back in the 40s, before this Department of Education stuff, that the African-American kids that he grew up with here in the New York area were getting a terrific education. And,
of course they were.
And really moving up. They were doing fine. But once the government got involved, it destroyed them.
The dumbing down of the courses. For instance, and this is not just the schools, of course, but in California and in many parts of the country, the multilingual education. The best thing you can give a kid is the ability to read and speak and write the English language. That'll take him farther than a jump shot ever will, and leave him there longer too.
Good, yeah, that's right. Good point. I mean, when you go to other countries, they speak English, but when you come here, oftentimes the kids don't, and then they wonder why they can't get a job.
Yeah, and they can't get a job because they're not required to learn English. English is, in another 30 years, will be the lingua franca of the world, And yet we are not teaching our kids to speak and use and write the English language. They say, well, it doesn't need to have an accent is okay. Just you got to learn the language. It's a shining tool, ready to pick it up. And you don't need to be 7 feet tall. You don't even need to be able to do the 40 and 4 flat. Just use your head, learn the language, use the language. Where do you think, from your perspective, this country got off the track? I don't know. I'm not smart enough to give the answer to that. I think the constant layering of more and more interfering fingers of government reaching out and say, well, we should do this. We should make certain they do that. Let's be sure they don't go wrong on this.
Yeah, we got to take a break. My guest, Charlton Heston, and he is just a terrific actor and a great guy. We'll be right back.
This is always the hardest time, when the enemy has no face.
You have been through this 100 times. I need to know. Where do you find your courage?
I wish I knew. Each warrior, each time, must fight it for himself. Come. This is the battle we've waited for so long.
Do you know if she's tied up right now? She's a beautiful woman.
Oh, I saw Sophia 3 months ago. She still looks just about the same.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
It looks wonderful. What's the best acting job you ever did in your own mind?
Well, I don't know. I'm not through yet.
But
it's hard to say. Because
you must have one that you say, I really was.
Which is better, to do, say, an 8.5, 8.5 on an easy part,
right? Okay.
Or to do a 7 on one of the Shakespearean monsters,
right? Yeah.
So it's very hard,
tough,
very tough. It's like, is it better to beat the Dallas Cowboys or San Diego or the Colts?
Did you miss anything in your life because you were locked in a kind of Hollywood persona and a guy that people expect you were very public? You couldn't go in a restaurant without people knowing who you are.
I've been a public face for most of my life now, and obviously it has restrictions. There are advantages and disadvantages. Believe me, the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. I get to go on national television.
Yeah.
No, seriously.
When you walk in a restaurant, you tend to move in, whether you.
But they
want you in a restaurant.
Yeah, and you can always get a table. You can get tickets to a show. You can, even as a citizen. One of the reasons I turned down the chance to run for the Senate is as a private. In the first place, I like acting better. I'd rather play a senator than be one. In the second place, I have an extraordinary access to a public forum as it is. Shows like this, Crossfire, the morning talk shows. If I write a letter to the editor, they publish it, and I'm not beholden to anyone. I can shoot my mouth off as irresponsibly as I choose to.
Did you have to wait till you had enough money in the bank before you exposed your conservative views because Hollywood is so liberal?
It wasn't that simple, and I'm not certain it's true. I would hate to think, though people keep telling me that, they say, well, it's easy for you, Chuck, you're established and all that. I'm not certain I've ever lost a job because of my political convictions. I've worked with a lot of liberals, directors, and actors, too. And I'd hate to think that the reverse could be true, and I don't think it is.
Isn't it true, though, that because you're an actor of such stature, you've won Academy Awards, you've played major roles, you're a star, that a younger actor coming along who expressed conservative views might find it much tougher?
That might be true. People tell me that's true. If it's so, I'm sorry that it's true.
I've had actors say to me privately, you know, Raj, I'm a conservative, but I would never dare let anybody know that in Hollywood. I wear all the ribbons and go to all the parties because I know that's
I get a lot of bad notices, but I don't think I've ever lost a job. I did get an interesting controversy when I was on the road campaigning for some of the senatorial candidates in the last election. And I was in Minnesota, where our guy won, and I was on a local talk show, and I was talking about how I feel about America, and I said, those wise old dead white guys who made up this country. And the local Urban League, which I have great respect for, very steady organization, they said, that's a racist, elitist comment. I said, wait a minute. They were wise, they certainly were old, they're dead now, and they were white, and they made up the country. How is that racist?
Very good. And so they went away.
They went away. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, the truth hurts sometimes. But that's you do have to be politically correct, I guess. Are you worried about political correctness?
I abhor political correctness in every example of it. It just revolts me. It's not what this country is about. For instance, now I happen to be an adopted blood member of the Minneconjou Sioux, from a picture I made in the 50s. And I admire the American Indians very much. But I resent their usurpation of the phrase Native American. I'm a Native American. My son, through my wife's side of the family, is a 12th generation Native American. My grandson is a 13th generation Native American. Knock off this Native American stuff. We're Americans.
Are you optimistic or pessimistic about us?
You have to be optimistic. I think, and I guess I'm an optimist by nature, but I forget who it was said it, but someone said the invention of the United States was the greatest political act in the history of mankind. And I believe that, and I believe in us.
Some people think we're destroying our own culture. Rap music,
there's a case to be made for that.
To taste some of the low level
multiculturalism, all that stuff.
Is that a danger?
It disturbs me. I mean, rock music is not music. It will have disappeared. I mean, listen to Mozart.
Yeah, he'll be around.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, folks, let me tell you, this would be a great Christmas present, and it's in the video stores right now. Charlton Heston does the Bible, and it's magnificent. So pick it up and get it for someone for Christmas. I think it'd be a great gift.
Thank you,
I intend to do that. Mr. Heston?
I hope next time I come in town we can talk again.
Please come on. I'll tell you what, I do this show live at night sometimes with phone calls. People would love to call and ask you
great.
questions. Come in, we'll do a whole hour together.
Great.
Okay?
That would be wonderful.